Today on the Chat and Chew Show.
And so I had to recognize early on that, I'm mothering men. Like, I'm inviting men into my life who are hurting, who are experiencing trauma, thinking that I could heal them. And so, even as a single woman dating, I realized I was still attracting the same type of needy men.
How do you go from dating disasters to a match made in heaven? For some of us who have suffered through a bad relationship, it can be hard to believe that the best is yet to come. And even if a better person comes along, will we be able to recognize or better yet avoid sabotaging something that is truly good for us? Today on the Chat and Chew Show, we are joined by Shanell McCoy, a creative entrepreneur with a voice for podcasts and music. We'll explore her journey of healing from an unhealthy relationship and discover how she learned to receive all of the good that comes with a healthy one. After launching her business, Shanell McCoy Creative, she has helped a number of startup entrepreneurs and small businesses bring the authentic heart of their ideas to life. She is also the host of a weekly YouTube series called Entrepreneur Friday and co-host of the Nelly and K Show, a podcast unpacking relationship topics from meeting to marriage. You also may remember seeing Shanell with her partner and Nelly and K Show co-host Kaylin Jones on our two-part episode entitled Finding and Keeping True Love earlier this year. Chat Tribe, you're in for a treat today as we unpack this story of heartbreak to happiness.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chat and Chew Show. My name is Betty.
And I am Roxanne.
And we are excited that you're with us today. How's everybody doing? Woo-hoo! Oh, okay, we're good. Well, as you know, the Chat and Chew Show is designed to empower you to do your relationships better. That's why we are here, to give you tips and tricks and tools and things that you can think about to improve your relationships, because all of us are in a relationship, whether we are an auntie or a grandma or mother or friend or, like I said last time, an enemy. We're all in relationship. And so our goal is to be able to do our relationships well, because when your relationships suffer, you suffer. But I have a question though. How many of you have ever been in a relationship or held onto a situation that you held on way too long? Anybody? Just held on way too long. You know, it wasn't good for you. It didn't serve you. It was, in fact, it was even bad for you. It cost you money. It cost you time. It put you through traumatic situations, but you continued to hold on. So today at the Chat and Chew Show, we're going to talk to a great friend of mine about when is it time to let go. If you're in a situation right now and you're saying, I need to make some moves, this is going to be the show for you. So hang on, and we'll see you on the other side of the break. Well, hello and welcome back. We are so happy to have you here with us. And we have a very special guest. We have the one and only Shanell McCoy joining us. Hello, Miss Shanell.
Hey.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm on vacation.
Nice.
But I was like, let me take a break and get on the Chat and Chew Show because I'm a fan.
Hey, where are you out on vacation?
In Phoenix, Arizona. Ooh. So out here visiting my little brother.
Nice. See y'all, Chat and Chew. People come through for us. Stay on vacation.
Right. Okay, I set my alarm clock. Like, let me be on the Chat and Chew real quick. Itinerary.
Nice. So I don't know if you guys remember, we had an episode back in February when we were talking about all the love things with Miss Shanell, and Kaylin were on this show with us. And it was a great episode. If you didn't see it, please go back and watch it. It was wonderful. It was 2 parts, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so go back and watch both parts because both were wonderful. And Shanell was dropping some major nuggets on us. And we had a whole happy meal.
and we wanted to have Shanell back. So Shanell, you told us about how you came from an unhealthy relationship into this beautiful one that we're all admiring from afar. Can you tell us, how did you get into that unhealthy relationship to start?
That's so I was 17 years old and I was in high school. I wanted to be like all my friends. It was senior year. And I met this guy who played on a basketball team. And right away I was like, okay, yup, I want to be with him. And he was like, I want you to be my girlfriend. I was like, okay, cool. And there was so many red flags. All my friends were like, Shanell, don't do it, don't do it. And I was like, but he's fine. And I was like, you know, I'm strong enough. I remember telling them, like, I'm strong enough to where if this doesn't work out, I could leave. And I didn't realize all the intricacies that come with being in a relationship at 17, and then being intimate, and then all the things that come with that when it comes to like the soul ties and what it does to you mentally and emotionally. And so I ended up staying in that relationship for 5 years, up until I was 22, and finally decided to leave for good after the 7th time of me breaking up with this guy.
Wow. And it's funny, you say, I saw the red flags and I thought, I'm strong enough, I can leave. I think we all do that. Can you tell us some of the red flags that you saw even before going into it?
Yeah, it's the mindset of thinking I can change him. Right away, people were telling me, you know, Shanell, he sleeps around a lot. He has a lot of different girls. And I remember when we first started talking, he was like, you know, I'm gonna cut everybody off. Like, I'm cutting off all these girls. I'm gonna do it for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. Like, he's willing to, you know, cut all these girls off for me. And so those were some of the red flags. And early on in our relationship, people were coming to me like, Shanell, you know, he was messing around with somebody else. I just want you to know. And so my thinking was, if I just talk to him, I can change him. And if he agrees to my terms, then we'll be good. And so I was basing that off of people I've seen and relationships I've seen where, you know how people always are like, you're going to go through ups and downs. And I was like looking at other people's ups and downs thinking like, oh, this is just a part of our ups and downs. So that was some of the red flags I saw, and I ignored all of that in the beginning.
Wow.
Well, I find this unusual because usually, you know, you don't see the red flags. Everybody else around you sees them. You know, usually we're like, oh, but you don't understand him. I love him. You know, that kind of thing. So I just find it's unusual that you kind of see the red flags. Your friends are telling you, and you're still like, no, I don't want. What made you think I could stay, or this is going to be different?
I think it's translating the red flags as opportunities. And I think people get that mixed up. They're like, oh, a red flag, that's an opportunity. Because, you know, for me, seeing this guy and understanding his background, I could see why he would do what he did. So I thought that I could come in and remedy that, knowing the why.
Yeah.
Especially being with somebody who was unhealthy and had a toxic mindset. I saw the way that he lived. I saw the trauma that he experienced in his life. Because I think too, recognizing that sometimes the perpetuators of toxicity have significant trauma that they're responding to. And we use that as an excuse, like, oh, this person, you know, was hurt in the past. And so I feel bad. So let me go and nurture this person as best as I can. And what I ended up doing was playing a motherly role in this relationship, trying to nurture a man who was hurting, instead of recognizing that he is responsible for the hurt that he's putting out. And I can't be the punching bag for that. Like, I can't hold your trauma for you. And so I think that was part of the reason that I ignored red flags, was because I was trying to be a nurturer and I was trying to fix him.
Let's go back to perpetuating toxicity. What did you?
I don't even know where that word came from. Perpetuating toxicity.
I like it. Man, that is something else. You're right. This term just stuck out. What you said, hurt man. you know, because you're in relationship, someone who's been bruised and banged up. I think all of us have. But when you are dealing in a relationship with someone who's banged up and now that's spilling onto you, I mean, that's a huge red flag. So if you are out there and you're like, well, how do I know? Because all of us, you know, if it's spilling onto you in a way that is hurting you, that's causing trauma to you, it may be time for you to be thinking about, should I be getting out of this? So Shanell, what was the breaking point for you?
Ooh. Well,
5 years. That's a long time.
That's a long time. I kept leaving that relationship. So sometimes I'd be done for like 2 weeks. Sometimes I'd be done for a month. I think what men do, especially unhealthy men, is they'll run a campaign. So like you leave the person and then they run a campaign of like, I'm different, I'm changed, I'll do this and that for you, I promise this won't ever happen again. And I fell for it every time. I'm like, okay, it'll be better. And it's better for like 2 weeks. And then the person gets comfortable. And I think what it is, it's a whole mind game of like, well, this person said they would change and now I'm holding on to what they said. So I remember that we broke up multiple times. Sometimes it'd be 2 weeks, sometimes it would be 3 weeks. But I always thought that he would change. And so I would go back and the change would only last for like 2 weeks. And then we'd go back to the toxicity. But I remember at one point in the last couple of months, I decided to document the arguments. So it would get so bad that I would be crying and my face would get puffed up. So I started taking pictures of my face. So I would take a picture of my face and then I would write out what happened in the argument. Oh, wow. And I remember the last time we argued was the first time I felt like I could physically be in danger. And after that argument, I took a picture of my face again and I wrote, you know, this is what happened in the argument. And I remember scrolling up on that note that I was writing in and realizing that this was happening every week. This is happening so frequently that, you know, I wouldn't have been aware of that if I didn't take the notes. And once I saw that this was happening and I was able to look at myself and say, wow, Shanell, look at your face right now. This isn't a good relationship. That's when I realized I have to leave this. And also at the time, I started a podcast called the Nelly Show. And on the podcast, I was talking about empowerment and how, you know, you have to be confident in yourself. And I remember hearing myself back and I was like, wow, I'm this confident person with the voice. And here I am looking at a picture of myself looking broken. And so that podcast kind of helped me to stay accountable and staying out of that relationship. Because now when I was talking to listeners, I did not want to go back on my podcast and be like, well, we got back together. Oh, wow. I wanted to continue to be motivating and empowering to women who started to grasp the podcast. So there were multiple things. And I believe that the time that I finally left, God orchestrated that because so many things aligned for me to leave and stay out of that relationship. So I really feel like it was a move of God that I finally was able to get out of that. So Roxy, I know you have gone through a divorce also. Could some of Shanell's story, can you relate to some of her story?
Some or all of it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, definitely a similar situation. And so it's funny, like I'm definitely hearing you, like that self-awareness is part of it. Like the things I'm hearing are self-awareness, because when you're dealing with someone who is emotionally abusive, they have a habit of kind of like altering your reality in a way. You know, it's like you believe that they're going to change because they've kind of taken control of what you see a lot. Like sometimes you end up in isolation, you don't have friends around you, they take up a lot of your time, or you may be constantly exhausted, you don't make good decisions. And so you get wrapped up in whatever they're telling you because they're the most consistent voice that you hear. And so you go along on, it's like you're on this roller coaster ride with them all the time. And so what I hear you saying, Shanell, which is great, is like this self-awareness of, it's almost like you brought your reality to you, like your own reality, by looking at your own pictures and like you can match that up with what he's saying. He's saying one thing, I'll never hurt you, whatever, whatever, but you're looking at pictures that are like, I am hurt. And this is happening consistently. And so yeah, that awareness is an amazing thing. And then also you mentioned accountability, because you had your podcast and you had people who were actually would know if you went back on your own word of, you know, looking out for yourself. And I think that's the difficult part about an abusive relationship is you don't typically have that accountability, and so you fall back into that other person's reality again, you know, and so you go back on that trail. And then if you're an eternal optimist, if you're a compassionate person, generous and all of that, they get you every time because they get you to feel sorry for them. But one of the things I always have, you know, I've said to myself, especially after that situation, is like, just because you can diagnose what they're going through doesn't mean you have to deal with it. And I think that's what we try to do. Like, oh, I know what it is. And it's like, that's great, but that doesn't mean you have to fix it.
Wow.
And that's what we think. So, yeah.
In those relationships, you really do feel stuck. I felt so stuck. And I remember my sister saying to me, you know, you don't have to be in this relationship. And I remember that being such a revelation of what? Really? I don't? Because I felt trapped in it. I didn't know that there was another way. And so, yeah.
Because as a person, I'm looking from the outside looking in. I mean, it seems like it's rational. Get out, you know? For those of us who haven't gone through anything like that, you're like, well, why don't you just get out? But you guys are both saying you feel stuck. I love what you said, Roxanne. You fall back into that reality again, you know, their reality again. And so it's like they have their fangs in you, if you would. Yeah. Like it's just they're holding on to you.
It's a bubble around you. And it's all of their stuff. It's, you know, like with my ex, it was like his friends, his family, his stuff. And always there was a wedge between me and my family, me and my friends, that, you know, if I have friends that come around and be like, oh, you know, she's not really your friend, right? She does this other thing. It's just, they find a way to kind of pull you away from everyone who really cares about you. So they can continue to alter your reality in that way.
It felt like us against the world. And I know people think that's cute, but it's not cute. Create this bubble and be like, it's just us. You know, I feel like you said, a lot of people feel stuck because they're so isolated. And I remember like, it was just me and him. And it was like, well, who do I have if I don't have him? And then with him going through all of the trauma that he was experiencing, I felt like I was the only sane one in his circle to walk him through that. But I didn't recognize that it wasn't my responsibility to walk him through his trauma. And also the people who were telling me, Shanell, this is not a good relationship, were actually valid. And so I thought, you know, you're like, oh, they're just hating on me. They don't understand. But it was like, no, people are giving you actual advice and people are actually concerned. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you are out of that. So why don't you tell us where you are now, even though Roxanne and I already know. And if you listen to the former past episodes, you'll know too. But so where are you now as far as relationships and such?
I'm in a good place. Definitely went through 4 years of just healing and going to therapy and unpacking that relationship, because I was in a place of trying to understand how I even got into a situation like that and wanting to ensure that I wouldn't get back into a situation like that ever again.
But and you were only 17 though. Like, you know, what is it? You know, if you're 17, you know, I don't know. I just gave you a pass, but.
But see, that's the thing that those patterns that you develop early on carry into your adulthood. And so I had to recognize early on that, I'm mothering men. Like I'm inviting men into my life who are hurting, who are experiencing trauma, thinking that I could heal them. And so, you know, even as a single woman dating, I realized I was still attracting the same type of needy men. And I got to a place where I was like, all right, I'm not going to date anymore. I went to God, I said, God, I'm giving my life over to you. I want you to have full control over this. And I'm to the point where I don't trust myself with picking men. So God, if you're going to send me anybody, you send him, because I can't pick him. Like, obviously I'm not doing a good job. And so I spent 4 years single, intentionally trying to find myself in God and find myself as a woman in the world, who didn't identify with a relationship. Because I think women, we tend to base our identity off of our relationship status. And I didn't want to be a young woman who was like, I'm single and I'm looking and I'm desperate because I'm nobody if I don't have anyone. And so I got to a point of learning how to be independent, learning how to trust in God. And so when Kaylin came into my life, it was literally like God placed him there and was like, here, Shanell. And like all signs pointed to Kaylin, like it's him. And me, being used to the type of men who I was interacting with, didn't see Kaylin. I was like, okay, God, that's cute. And then like kept going this way. But God kept like pulling me back and showing me like, this is somebody who is healthy. This is somebody who is for you. And this is somebody who you don't have to be afraid is going to hurt you. One of the biggest things within my relationship with Kaylin starting off was unpacking the trauma that I still had, or the residue of trauma that I still had, and coming to an understanding that this person is not going to hurt you in the same way that the last person did.
Now, for you guys who don't know, Kaylin is my son.
So you can vouch for him, Betty?
I can vouch for him. Yeah. Seriously.
I have a question. So you said 4 years of being single, and I know for some people it's like 4 years. Excuse me, like what? I'm not doing that. But I know, like some things we know. You're an entrepreneur. You have your podcast and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like you were just kind of sitting around. Can you describe what those 4 years was like, and how you kind of, I guess, how you found some contentment in that? Especially considering by the time Kaylin came, you were like, whatever. Like, how did you get to that place? What's that 4 years look like?
The first year I was like, I'm gonna be intentionally single for a year. So I remember, from the time of that breakup to the next year, I was like, okay, God's gonna send me somebody by this time next year. And then I was like, oh, no, it didn't happen. Okay, so let's do another year. And it didn't happen the other year. So I remember going through like the first 2 years of like, when is it gonna happen? And just anticipating this person. And in that time, it wasn't until I think last year that I realized that I'd spent most of my singleness trying not to be single. My singleness in obsession for the next relationship. And it kind of, it came to a head and God revealed to me myself again. And there was a situation and I was very like ashamed of what had happened. And I was like, that's not me. And I remember my friends were like, that is you. You put yourself in a bad situation. And at that moment, I realized that I had devoted so much of my singleness to impressing other men, to trying to be this new woman, but trying to do it so that my ex could see that I moved on without him. So it was like, it got muddy where there was a season of like redemption, there was a season of obsession, and I had to release all of it. And so one of the things that really shifted it for me was this book called Kingdom Woman by Tony Evans.
Yeah.
And in the book, he was talking about the purpose of a woman. And he was saying that, our purpose is to push the kingdom agenda. And when you are, when you're single, God is your husband. And so my job as a single woman is to do what I can to please God or do what God is calling me to do. And so when I had that realization, then I was like, okay, like I'm good. There's a purpose for me being single. And especially during that time, I started the Singlehood Podcast, where I was teaching women how to be content in their singleness through the podcast. And I did like 20 episodes
Oh, wow.
But there, I realized there was so much self-work that I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led me to being content. It's just understanding that there's purpose in my singleness and that I'm most effective right now in this season as a single woman.
I want to thank you for your transparency though, because I feel like a lot of women go through that, like I'm going to be intentionally single, but God is going to give me my husband by December 1st, 2021. And so a lot of us go through that, but we don't talk about it. So I want to thank you for your transparency of, just sharing the journey to getting that contentment. But we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I would love to hear more about how you were able to transition into a healthy situation and get rid of some of that residue.
Now, a delicious word. Let's chew.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Roxanne, and today we're making a black bean and sweet potato chili. I really love this dish because it's super yummy. So it's a sweet and savory mix, which I always love, and then also it's a meal in a bowl. And now that it's getting cold outside, chili is just the perfect meal to have. So this dish is inspired by a minimalist baker. It's a five ingredient recipe that I actually added my own ingredient of Beyond Beef and also habanero pepper to it. And so I like my chili a little chunky, and that's why I've done that. So we're going to get started with pulling together our ingredients. We're using 1 pack of pre-cut sweet potatoes, 2 cans of black beans, 2 cups of vegetable broth, 1 container of salsa, 1 onion, it can be white or yellow, and then 1 package of Beyond Beef. And as I said, the special ingredient of the habanero pepper, just 1. So we're going to get started with the onion and chop that up so that's ready for us to use throughout our recipe. And then we're going to pull out that Beyond Beef. And again, as I've said in previous recipes, you can always replace the Beyond Beef with turkey, like ground turkey, ground beef, whatever you prefer. Just keep in mind that when you're cooking the meat, you're going to need to drain that before you pour that into your recipe. So I'm going to cook this Beyond Beef in a pan, and I'm just going to add about 1/4 of my onion, and then I'm going to actually sprinkle some cumin on there as well, and then salt and pepper just to season it. And I'm going to cook that until it's pretty much browned on the outside and almost done, and it'll continue to cook when we throw it in our chili later. Now in our large pot, and this will be the finishing pot for our chili, we're going to add the remainder of that onion with a little bit of olive oil, and we're going to toss that around and cook that until those onions are transparent. Once the onions are transparent, we'll add the sweet potatoes to that, the entire package. And then I've added some chili pepper on this as well. It's about 1 tablespoon of chili pepper to that mixture, and then you let that cook for another about 2 minutes and stir that up. Once that has cooked for a couple of minutes, we're now going to add the rest of our ingredients, everything except for the black beans. So we're adding the vegetable broth. We're adding the container of salsa. We're also going to throw in now our meat, and you can include the onions and everything that are in that meat, or the Beyond Beef, if you will. And then we're also going to bring that to a boil. And once that boils, then we'll add our black beans in last. And this is also when I throw in my habanero pepper. And so when I put that in, I'm going to mix that up and bring it to a boil once more. And then once it's to a boil, I'm going to turn that down so that it's just simmering on like a low, medium low. And then cover it up and actually just let it simmer for, I would say, another 20-30 minutes or so. And you're just going to let it simmer. The telltale sign of when it's done will be when your sweet potatoes are soft enough to just kind of cut into with your spoon. So that is your recipe. And what I like to do when I'm preparing it is I'll put it in a bowl and then also sprinkle some fresh cilantro on top. And it's just like what you'll find in this recipe is packed with flavor. It smells good when you're done when you're cooking it. And then one of the other things, and sorry Betty again, that I like to add is avocado too. So when I'm having it for a meal by itself, I'll cut up some avocado, some fresh avocado and just throw it right in the middle of the bowl once I've plated it. And the spices with the avocado with a little salt and pepper, perfect. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. All right, next time. All right, so we are back with Miss Shanell, and she is sharing with us her story. Thank you so much for being so transparent with us. I'm sure you are helping our chat tribe tremendously with your story. But I wanted to get into, after you've gone through the trauma, you had the bad relationship and everything, you did some healing, and you're now like ready for this good relationship. What are some tips that you give people, or some things that you learned yourself, in terms of like how to accept the healthy relationship?
That's good. I remember meeting Kaylin, and then I was like, man, there's something about him. I don't know what it is, but there's something about him. And I remember meeting him and then having a moment with God where he was like, Shanell, I need you to drive. I need you to drive to the lake. And so I drove to the lake, and I remember, God saying, like, I'm about to send you something, but I need you to write down your fears. So I wrote down all of my fears that came with being in a relationship again. And some of my fears were like, I'm afraid to lose my independence. I spent 4 years trying to get my time back. And so I was scared that, if I got into a relationship, that I would lose my time and I would lose my independence. I would have to give up everything that I built. And so I wrote all these things down, and I remember just being in prayer and God revealing to me, you need to release these fears. And as you enter this relationship with Kaylin, I need you not to trust him, but I need you to trust me. At least for the first part, trust me. And so what I would say to anybody who's trying to enter a healthy situation after an unhealthy one is to make sure that you have a strong, I would say like a strong sense of self, but also be strong in your spirituality and what makes, essentially, like, have a strong foundation of self. Mm-hmm. Because you can't go into a new relationship expecting this person to heal you or expecting them to hold the trauma that you've experienced. I remember dating and being like, oh my gosh, I went through this toxic relationship, and, just hoping that this person would feel bad for me and want to nurture me in the same way that I nurtured this last person. But I realized that going into a healthy relationship, there's a level of healing that you have to do before you go into it. And that you can't expect the person to heal you. But my expectation for the person I'm with is to hear me and to understand that I may be hesitant in certain areas because of what I experienced, but I'm not going to go to you and expect you to walk me through the process. So I would say definitely have a strong foundation of self, do a significant amount of healing, and also understand why you're entering a new relationship in the first place. And if it's to be nurtured, then you should not be entering a relationship. I think understanding your purpose and knowing that getting into a relationship means this is an opportunity to advance my purpose, I think makes a world of difference than entering a relationship just to get the love that you didn't receive in the last relationship.
I love what you said. Yeah. I'm not expecting you to heal me, but I need you to hear me. Yeah. That's strong. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Yeah,
I was there with you.
I was like, I don't need you to heal me, but I need you to hear me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Mm-hmm. I like that too, because sometimes we think because we don't want the other person to heal us, we don't share that part too. Like we think that's mine, so I'm going to deal with it. I'm responsible with my trauma. Mm-hmm. But you do need the person to at least know that's what you're working on. Mm-hmm. And so I really like that.
That's so good, because that's a huge part of communication. Because there's parts of me I've learned through entering this relationship that were guarded. And if I didn't explain the reasoning why I was guarded, then it would have came off as, oh, she's, I don't know how it would have came off, but it would have came off negatively. So for me to say, I'm hesitant with this because of this, then it creates more of an awareness and an understanding. so that when the person approaches me in that area, it's with sensitivity and it's with care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Roxanne, I want to say Coach Roxanne. uh, Sometimes do you know that you've gone through trauma though? I mean, like, you know, you are responding in a certain way, but do you know it's because of what you've gone through? Is that common? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely common to not know that,
Oh, I see.
yeah, because the thing about it is sometimes we deal with, it's funny, I heard somebody say this, but like you have to figure out how your partner deals with trauma, right? Like, what do you do in trauma? What do I do? And the thing about it is sometimes we learn how to deal with trauma from our family, our parents, their parents, etc. And, for a lot of us, like in our parents and grandparents era, maybe you didn't talk about or deal with trauma at all. And it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a thing, right? And so we find a way to make it through. We say, I'm strong, I got this. Um, and so you push on through. And not only that, sometimes we're so used to pushing through, especially if you're like a high achiever, or
Mm-hmm.
you're a person that is, everyone depends on you. And you're so used to it, you don't even know you're packing away trauma. You're like, I made it through and I'm going, and you don't know this thing over here that you do that's weird and dysfunctional is related to that trauma that you've been through. So that's very common for people to not even be aware.
Mm-hmm. So
It
that's
takes.
why
Oh, sorry.
I was just
It,
say that's
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that's why in this show is designed to help people navigate through their relationships because sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, but you don't know why you say this when you are feeling pressed this way, or why do you react that way, and just hearing other stories make you, oh shoot, I do that. I do that. Oh, we got, that kind of thing. I think it makes you aware of it. And then I think once you become aware of it, then you can start to work on it. But if you are unaware of it, you can't work on it. That's why we need people in our lives to be able to, even therapists, to be able to say, hey, you this, that, that kind of thing. But
Yeah. Do you see the pattern? Like you need someone outside you to see the pattern. Like
yeah,
you see what's going, because it's very hard to hear ourselves. Have you ever like I thought it was interesting how you said you took pictures of yourself.
yeah.
How many times do we look at ourselves when we're going through stuff or record ourselves and listen back to our own voices? Like we never do that. It's just not a normal thing. But if you're talking to somebody, you have someone to bounce things off of, they can say, "Oh, I noticed a pattern. Did you see that?" And you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was happening." So it's super valuable. And so I really, again, I really appreciate your point, Shanell, of just vocalizing the stuff that you're working on, because your partner, at least when they see the pattern, they're aware of what's going on. Even though you may not know all the ways it plays out, the fact that they know you're working on this thing, it says, oh, okay, that may be from that. And
Mhm.
so they can kind of bring that to your attention.
that's such a good point, because in that relationship, when you're isolated and you don't have, in an unhealthy relationship, you don't have people to go to or people to really tell you, when you cut off all the people who are telling you that this is not a good situation, the only person I felt like I had to talk to was myself. And so my voice memos in my phone became my best friend. I would go on drives and just write in my phone. But like you said, it created that self-awareness. But then when I was able to invite people back in, there was a certain level of humility that I had to have in order to hear that these are the ways that you went wrong. Because in relationships, it's a two-way street. I can't sit here and be like, this person did this and this, there's a certain level of responsibility that I have for one, allowing this in my life, for not speaking up for myself, and also for not being aware of the unhealthiness in the relationship. So there's a certain level of humility that you have to have in order to grow and in order to seek help after something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I think it's our knee jerk reaction to treat the pain, right? Like, this hurts. Give me something. Give me a band aid, but not, okay, how did I get cut in the first place?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Wow. That is huge. Now I know you guys have started a brand new podcast, and tell us a little bit about your brand new podcast.
Yeah. So, Kaylin and I were just sitting at my house, and we're in Minnesota, so there was this huge snow day, and he couldn't leave. So I was like putting up my podcast equipment, and I was like, "Wait, you want to like record something real quick?" And so we picked up the microphones and recorded for an hour, which is actually it's the first episode of our podcast called The Intro. And we were like, this is really good. And so that night we recorded 4 more episodes, and we just released it this week. Wow. So it's a really fun podcast between the two of us. We went from just kind of joking and introducing ourselves to actually talking about real things that come up in relationships. Mm-hmm. And one of the feedback I got from a couple was saying, like, this podcast really spoke to some of the things that we were going through when we first started dating. So we want to cover everything from meeting to marriage, and basically explore how couples navigate their relationships. And also, I don't want to discourage single people from listening as well, because we do give some tips on how to prepare yourself for a relationship as well.
Yeah, I've listened to both the episodes, but this last one is so funny. It is so good. So who is the age group for? Who would you say your podcast?
Good question. Right now, I think as we progress, we can widen the range. But right now, I think it's more so of like the phase of the relationship. So if you're kind of like in the beginning phases of your relationship, or I would even say if there's wisdom that you would like to share about the relationship that you're in for people who are entering a relationship, that's who it's for. We just want to encourage people to really be mindful about the relationships they're in, and think about how they can do them better. Not to steal the Chat and Chew show.
That's okay. It keeps it all in the fam. That's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like on the podcast that your transparency. You guys are just you're kind of new dating still. You're just open and transparent about it, which you don't find that. That's uncommon. Usually people are kind of like secretive and hiding and that kind of thing. But one thing that I do like about Kaylin, and this is our family, we're just transparent. We're an open book. Like seriously, we are. Like nothing to hide, really, so I really enjoy that, because a lot of times people too, they're like they want to hide and pretend like everything is perfect, and we're always, we don't argue, we don't do that, kind of thing. But you guys just lay it on the table. Here it is, so that's refreshing to me too.
We're growing, and we want to encourage other people to grow in the same way. I think like when you hide and when you act like everything's okay, you eventually will implode. And so we want to encourage other people to be transparent too, because we're all human and we're all going through similar things. If we were all willing to put it out there, there's healing opportunities there, and there's growth there. So that's what we want to encourage other people to do.
Cool. Well, this was a fantastic episode. Thank you so much for doing this. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at the Shanell McCoy. And then you can also follow our show, the Nelly and K Show, on Instagram as well. And we're also on Facebook.
Okay. Cool. Roxy, tell people where they can find us.
Sure. You can find us at Chat and Chew Show on Instagram or on Facebook. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe wherever that button is. Please find it and press it. Also, please press the bell if you want to get notified of our new episodes, and tell your friends, like, share, and comment, and etc. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by the Chat and Chew Company. Host Betty Jones, co-host Roxanne Brew, producer Vanessa Outland, and music by Elwood Jones.